Welcome back to a Book a Day podcast. It seems this week we've gone from a book a day to a book of a week because we are discussing Daodejing all week, but I'm sure it's worth it. There is so much wisdom, so much depth in the book that we have to go very slowly, understand the philosophy, the deeper realities it is talking about. So far, we have discussed 30 chapters, which are each chapter is just a few verses, a few lines, and that's all. So it doesn't take much time to read a chapter. Where it does take time is when you reflect on those lines and when you think about it, what that means. And that's what we are doing here. We are narrating, reading these lines, and then trying to find the meaning. What is it trying to say? In the previous episode so far, and in this episode as well, we'll see that a lot of these verses are dedicated to or written for the rulers, and there is some kind of guidance in terms of ethics, in terms of values that has been prescribed for them. But all this advice, all this wisdom is very personal, and I still feel it is applicable for everyone, not just for the leaders. So let me read these lines from chapter 31. Once again, very short chapter, just a few lines, and you will see how this entire philosophy is very much against aggression, against violence. It tells you to not really glorify the war, but just hold your ground. Let me read the chapter for you. Fine weapons are instruments of misfortune. All things detest them. Therefore, those who follow the Tao do not dwell upon them. The gentleman values the left when at home, but in war he values the right. Weapons are not tools of a gentleman. When he must use them, he does so with calm restraint. Victory is not glorious. To glorify it is to delight in slaughter. So just a few lessons here very quickly. One is victory is not glorious. We must not glorify it, the war especially. Second thing, when you're using weapons, when you have to use them in a war, do so with calm restraint and understand that when you get into a conflict, you get into a war, you're going to become a different person. Make sure you're calm. Make sure you're not being silly or unreasonable. So this chapter kind of provides comfort to those living in a world of conflict, whether it's an internal conflict or an external conflict. Whether it is inside you or outside you, it's about finding peace and not finding delight in anyone's harm. Then we move on to the next chapter, chapter 32, which once again talks about the Tao. It says, "The Tao is forever nameless. Though it seems small, nothing under heaven can subdue it. Were princes and kings able to hold fast to it, all things would submit of their own accord. Heaven and earth would unite to send down sweet dew, and the people would live in harmony without command." Once again, Lao Tzu praises the invisible power of the Tao. It is subtle, You can't grasp it, but it is really effective, more effective than any law or authority. It works. It works without forcing itself, forcing its way, and it nourishes. That's the power of Tao. And that's the primary energy, primary source that has been referred to again and again and again, the Tao. And how do you know it? You know it by knowing yourself, which is what the next chapter, chapter 33, talks about. It says, "He who knows others is wise. He who knows himself is enlightened. He who conquers others has strength. He who conquers himself is mighty. He who knows contentment is rich. He who perseveres has will. To die but not to perish, that is true longevity." So what he is doing here, he's shifting quickly from cosmic principles to personal wisdom. From the outside, the Tao that is there, to inside, your own inner being. And he says the greatest conquest is self-mastery. That's what you should aspire for. And I think psychologically it makes a lot of sense. You have to distinguish between outer achievements and inner realization. When you know others, you know other things, it brings understanding. But when you know yourself, it brings liberation, great liberation. There's no better feeling than that. Well, and then combine that with humility. That's a great combination, which is what chapter 34 teaches us. It says, "The great Tao flows everywhere, both to the left and to the right. It loves and nourishes all things, yet does not lord it over them. It accomplishes its purpose, but makes no claim. It clothes and feeds all beings, yet does not call itself master. Therefore, it is always beyond praise." The Tao in the spiritual sense has been described here. This is just beyond everything. It gives rise to everything, but it is beyond that. And he here compares the Tao here to a river that kind of nourishes everything it touches, and there's no discrimination, there's no pride. And its greatness lies in its humility, in serving everyone without claiming superiority. And that's a great model for leadership, love, even creativity. You act from abundance, not from ego. And you create and sustain without taking any credit. You do your work and leave it at that. That's all. Now let's move on to chapter 35. It says, "Hold fast to the great image, and all under heaven will come to you. They come and do not harm you. In you they find peace and rest. Music and fine food tempt the passing guest, but the Tao's words are bland and flavorless. Looked at, it cannot be seen. Listened to, it cannot be heard. Yet, in its use, it is inexhaustible." If you just read this phrase, the great image, that he says in the first line, hold fast to the great image. This great image is the inner vision of harmony. the Tao itself, rather. Those who dwell in this harmony, they radiate peace. And this peace attracts all beings. And it doesn't do so through charm, it does through its quiet presence. So the focus here is you have to distinguish the surface pleasures from the subtle nourishment that is deep inside in everything, everyone. That is the subtle nourishment of the Tao. And it might be bland to the senses, but it is very much necessary to the spirit. Now let's move on to chapter 36, which is again an interesting one. It says, if you want to shrink something, you must first allow it to expand. If you want to weaken something, you must first allow it to be strong. If you want to discard something, you must first allow it to flourish. This is called the subtle light. The soft and weak overcome the hard and strong. Just as fish should not be taken from the depths, and the state's sharpest weapons should not be displayed to the people. It's a very much a political advice and very much intended for the leaders, but it also has a personal message. You can interpret it both ways. What he means to say here is that every force in nature carries the seeds of its opposite. Growth will lead to decline, strength will lead to vulnerability, and if you really want to influence the world, you really want to change the world, you'll have to understand these hidden reversals. These are kind of paradoxes, but they're not riddles. They are just straightforward reflections of natural law. The universe works, as we keep saying it in this book, is through ebbs and flows. And the wise person never resists the current, but acts with timing, knowing that what rises will fall and what falls will rise again. So you understand the rhythm of the universe and you move along with it. You don't resist it, you don't act against it. You flow with it. Then comes chapter 37, which praises simplicity, as we have done so many times in the book. It says, the Tao is constantly without action, yet there is nothing it does not do. If kings and rulers could hold to it, all things would transform of their own accord. When desire stirs, I quiet it with nameless simplicity. Then there is no desire, and when there is no desire, all things are at peace. What we mean here by not focusing too much on actions is that we must focus on our being. The Tao acts without acting. That's the philosophy here, kind of Wu-Wei philosophy. That is allowing all things to develop naturally. If you let them develop naturally, there is this inner Tao, this rhythm of the universe that will take care of it. You don't have to force. And true order arises in this universe not from control, but from simplicity and calm. What essentially he's talking about here is some kind of non-coercive influence. That is what we mean by living by the Tao. That is to allow things their natural course and interfere only when it's absolute necessary. And then too with great gentleness. That's all. The chapter 38 talks about something that we have discussed earlier also. And this keeps coming, this theme again, that when you lose Tao, other things take its place, such as morality, law and order, and all those things, which are perfectly fine, but they are filling the gap for the natural order of things, which in itself is beautiful. But when the Tao is not there, we have to replace it by these forced measures. So let me read it for you. It says, when the Tao is lost, there is virtue. When virtue is lost, there is benevolence. When benevolence is lost, there is righteousness. When righteousness is lost, there is propriety. Propriety is the husk of faith and loyalty, the beginning of disorder. Therefore, the great man dwells in the substance, not in the husk, in the fruit, not in the flower. And here he goes very deep into this philosophy that whatever is happening in the society, the fall from spontaneous goodness to this artificial morality, and he gives reasons for it. He says that when people lose touch with the Tao, the inner harmony, they start creating rules, rituals, moral codes to replace what was once natural, what was once the real order of the universe. And this is one of the radical parts of Daodejing. And it seems very interesting. You have to understand that he doesn't really dismiss morality here. What he sees morality as a symptom of loss, as a substitute for inner truth. And the closer we are to the Tao, the less we need commandments. The fact we need commandments, it means we are already in some kind of trouble. And what we should aspire for is the unity of all things, which is what chapter 39 says. Let me read it for you. Those who attained the One in ancient times, heaven attained the One and became clear. Earth attained the One and became steady. Spirits attained the One and became holy. Valleys attained the One and became full. All things attained the One and lived. Kings and princes attained the One and ruled rightly. Without the One, heaven would crack, earth would crumble, spirits would fade, valleys would dry, all things would perish, and rulers would fall. Humility is the root of nobility. The low is the foundation of the high. First of all, the One here is referred to as the Tao. That is the unifying principle of life. Everything that endures does so because it remains connected to the whole, to the Tao. And when you have pride, when you have fragmentation, and even isolation, it leads to decay. And that's why you must focus on this cosmic ecology. All beings, all things are part of a single living system. We are a part of the whole. And that's what a wise person does. He lives humbly, grounded in this unity, knowing that separation is illusion. And then chapter 40, which is really short, just 4 lines, talks about the return. It says, reversal is the movement of the Tao. Weakness is the method of the Tao. All things in the world arise from being, and being arises from non-being. Once again, the paradox. Everything returns to its opposite, growth to decline, fullness to emptiness. What we call being, it comes from non-being. It means that even emptiness is the womb of creation. And I find this chapter particularly moving because I feel it distills the entire Taoist philosophy into these 4 lines. The Tao moves in circles, not lines, and true power flows from yielding, and true creation comes from stillness. You be still. You pursue calmness, both inside and outside, and you find the Tao, and that's how you live in harmony with the universe. You follow the rhythm of the universe. That's all what the Tao principles tell us to do. So with that, I'll take your leave, and I'll catch you the next time with the next few chapters. Thank you very much for listening.